All right, let's get right into it. Think about our digital world for a second. I mean, everything from the OS on your phone to the cloud services we all rely on. So much of it is built on a foundation that was laid down decades ago. But what if that foundation has a huge, fundamental crack running right through it? Well, today we're going to talk about that very crack, and more importantly, the incredible modern tools being built to finally fix it for good.
So take a look at this number, 70%. This is the number that literally haunts the biggest tech companies on the planet. For more than a decade, giants like Microsoft and Google have been saying the same thing. 70% of their most critical, most severe security bugs all come from the exact same root cause, memory safety errors. And despite all our amazing advances in tech, this number just won't budge.
And you know, this isn't just some internal problem for programmers to worry about. It's gotten so bad that top U.S. national security agencies like CISA and the NSA are sounding the alarm. They're basically saying, hey, everyone starting a new critical project in C or C++ today, that's just an unacceptable risk. They're telling us we are choosing to build on unsafe ground.
So what is going on here? Why can't we fix this? Well, to get it, you have to understand this sort of unfixable flaw that sits right at the heart of the languages that built our modern world. And this isn't some new bug we just discovered. It's a systemic crisis that's been with us for decades. Okay, so here's the most important thing to get. This is not about bad programmers. It's about a fundamental design choice in languages like C and C++. See, they give developers total control over memory, which is powerful, but they were designed in a way that just permits memory errors. They don't stop you. And even with all the modern C++ features, safety is always opt-in. It's something a developer has to remember to do and get it perfect every single time. One tiny slip-up, one moment of carelessness, and boom, you've just created a potentially catastrophic vulnerability.
So let's make this real. How does one of these little memory bugs actually blow up into a massive security breach you read about in the news? Let's break down the anatomy of a classic hack.
All right, the most famous culprit of all time is the buffer overflow. The easiest way to think about it is this. Imagine a program sets aside a small box in memory, maybe for your username. A buffer overflow is what happens when an attacker tries to stuff something way too big into that little box.
And this is where the magic, the dark magic, happens. So let's say a login form is expecting a 16-character name. An attacker can just send 100 characters instead. Now the first 16 characters fill up that box like they're supposed to, but the rest, it spills out, overwriting whatever was sitting next to it in memory. And if the thing sitting right next to it happens to be the program's instructions, well, the attacker has just hijacked the whole program. It's now running their code, not yours. Game over.
Then you've got an even sneakier bug called a use after free. This one's a bit trickier. Imagine your program uses a piece of memory and leaves a little signpost or a pointer pointing to it. Later, it's done with that memory, so it throws it away, but it forgets to take down the signpost. If the program, or worse, an attacker, follows that old signpost again, who knows where it leads? It's pointing to a memory location that might now contain something totally different, maybe even malicious code. It's an incredibly powerful bug and notoriously hard to find.
So if the old way is clearly broken, what's the new way?
Well, the industry has pretty much settled on two major philosophies for building safe software. You can think of it as a friendly little battle, the compiler versus the collector.
And right here, you can see this fundamental split in their approach. On one side, you have Rust. It uses its incredibly smart compiler to prove that no memory errors can possibly happen, and it does this before your code even runs. Then, on the other side, you have Go. It uses an automatic garbage collector to manage and clean up memory while your program is running. Really, it's a choice between prevention by construction versus safety through automation.
The secret sauce in Rust is something called the borrow checker. Seriously, just picture the strictest librarian you can imagine. Before it lets you check out a book, it analyzes every single way you plan to use it. It enforces a very strict set of rules about who owns data and who's just borrowing it. Now, it can be tough to satisfy this librarian up front. It makes you work for it. But once your code passes its inspection, once it compiles, you have a rock-solid mathematical guarantee of memory safety. It's amazing.
Go, on the other hand, takes a much more relaxed approach. Its garbage collector is like having an automatic cleaning crew working in the background while your program runs. It just keeps track of all the memory you're using, and the second something isn't needed anymore, the crew just swoops in and tidies it all up. This makes writing code so much simpler because you, the developer, are basically freed from ever having to think about memory management yourself. Now, this difference in philosophy leads to some really interesting trade-offs in performance. Because Rust does all its safety work before the program runs, its performance at runtime is blazingly fast. And, this is the key part, super predictable. Go is also really fast, but that cleaning crew, the garbage collector, it does have to pause the whole program every once in a while for just a split second to do its job. This makes Go fantastic for overall throughput, but Rust is the undisputed king for applications where every single microsecond of latency really counts.
But hey, the story doesn't just end with Rust and Go. Not at all. There's a whole spectrum of safety out there, with a bunch of other languages offering their own really clever solutions to this 70% problem. This table gives us a fantastic snapshot of that landscape. Just look at the different safety models. You've got Ada and Spark on one end, using formal mathematical proofs for the kind of absolute correctness you need in, say, an airplane. Then you have a language like Zig, which is taking a super pragmatic approach to being a safer, better C. And of course, over in the Apple world, you've got Swift, which uses a clever system called automatic reference counting. Each one strikes a totally different balance between absolute safety, raw speed, and just how easy it is for developers to get their job done. Okay, so with all of these choices, how in the world do you actually pick the right tool for the job? This is where we get super practical. Let's build a simple decision matrix for your next project. The key really is to ask yourself one single question. What is my number one most important non-negotiable constraint? If you can answer that, the right language will practically choose itself. So first up, if failure is simply not an option, I'm talking flight control software, pacemakers, nuclear reactor controls, then your primary constraint is absolute correctness. The choice here is clear. You use Ada/Spark. It's the only language that lets you mathematically prove that your code is free from entire classes of bugs. Okay, what if you need the absolute maximum performance possible, with predictable, rock-solid low latency? Think operating systems, game engines, high-frequency trading systems. Here, your constraint is bare metal performance. And Rust is the clear winner, giving you all the speed of C++, but with those incredible compile-time safety guarantees. Now, what if your main goal is to build and ship scalable network services as fast as humanly possible? In that world, your constraint is developer velocity. And for that, you choose Go. Its simplicity, crazy fast compilation, and amazing built-in tools for concurrency make it the top choice for cloud services and microservice architectures today. Finally, what if you're not starting a brand new project? What if your constraint is dealing with a massive existing C code base that you can't just rewrite from scratch? Well, then Zig is your answer. It is designed from the ground up to work seamlessly with C while giving you major safety improvements. It provides a real practical path forward. So how do we, as an industry, move forward? The path is actually pretty clear. First, you draw a line in the sand. Mandate memory-safe languages for all new projects, period. For all the huge legacy systems that already exist, the strategy is to identify the most critical, most vulnerable parts and rewrite those first. You can use a proven technique called the Strangler Fig pattern to gradually, piece by piece, replace old, unsafe code with new, safe services. And of course, none of this happens without investing in training our teams on these powerful new tools. At the end of the day, the evidence is just overwhelming. This 70% problem is a choice, not a law of nature. We have the tools, we have the knowledge, we know how to build a safer, more secure digital world. The only question left is, are we finally going to choose to do it?